There we go. Okay, hi everybody. It's Kristen. I'm here on time today. Okay, no internet problems, and though I momentarily lost my phone, I thankfully managed to find it. So here we are and found it on time to get everything set up, which is just kind of crazy. Thank you. Apparently Grover increases my Periscope popularity, so I try and wear Grover, periodically, because if nobody will join my scope for any other reason, maybe they'll join it to see Grover on my shirt. Anyways, so we're going to talk about a little bit more than Grover today. Let me start with an introduction. If you're new to Periscope, I think I've been doing scopes for a whole month now, which is kind of crazy to think. This will be like this today will make a month of scopes, and I've only missed one day, and that was just due to fatigue. And I actually did like a little quick scope on that day too, but otherwise we've been here every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. A couple of Tuesdays a little early because some Tuesdays I do run errands in the afternoon, but otherwise we've been here, which is pretty cool. So if you're new to the scope, we're talking about pregnancy, birth, baby stuff, parenting, mothering stuff, 4 days a week, and I'm here live. This is all totally live and unscripted, which I actually think it's really cool. So I think that Periscope is cool. I probably maybe wouldn't have thought it was cool in the past, but now I've done a lot of teaching, and so I feel a little bit more comfortable being up here and talking, even if I guess maybe if I look silly in my Grover shirt. But here I am. This is the real me. So I'm Kristen, and I am from naturalbirthandbabycare.com. That's my website. I founded it almost exactly 10 years ago. It is almost Natural Birth and Baby Care's 10th anniversary. We're actually at 9 years and 11 months till Natural Birth and Baby Care's anniversary and counting. Actually, a little under that. So it's like 9 years. We're almost there. It's on November 26th. See, I even know when my website was born. Anyways, I've been running Natural Birth and Baby Care for almost 10 years. I've been doing the Birth, Baby, and Life podcast for almost 3 years now. That started in December 3 years ago. And I'm a little bit behind on podcast episodes right now just because trying to figure out how to balance everything has been a little bit tough. And I'm hoping to make a couple changes to my workflow next week so that you podcast listeners will get that again. And then I've been doing the scopes here for a month, so we'll see where things go with that. But if you're interested in the site, it is naturalbirthandbabycare.com. That's quite a mouthful. Or you can head on over to naturalbirth.tv. That'll take you right to a listing of all the scopes and actually all of the videos that I do. And that's just an easy way to get to the website. Then you'll be able to see the top menu and hop around. Everything new goes up on the blog, so you can check that out. You can also sign up for the newsletter there. So that's naturalbirth.tv. Today, what we're going to talk about is a birthy topic. So we did a baby topic yesterday, which was lots of fun, and you guys got to see me swaddle Jacob, my little baby doll that stays in here. We've talked about some pregnancy topics, but today we're going to get a little birthy. So we're going to talk about a topic that's close to my heart. It's actually not something that I've really had experience with, because we're going to talk about navigating hospital birth. And I have 7 kiddos, and all of them actually were born at home. So I chose a home birth for each one of them, and we've had pretty smooth, uncomplicated births with all of them. Nothing that some work wouldn't overcome, and then the last few have just really come pretty smooth and easy. But I teach online childbirth classes, which you can find out more about at mamababybirthing.com, M-A-M-A, babybirthing.com. And so I see a lot of moms come through my classes who are planning a hospital birth, and moms from all over the world. So they have different things going on with what they need for their births. And one of the biggest questions that I get is, how can I make it through a hospital birth and still have a natural birth experience? How can I navigate this experience of a natural hospital birth? And I think that that's a great question. It's a valid question, and it doesn't really matter why you're choosing to have a hospital birth. Some moms just feel more comfortable in the hospital. I think that's totally valid. Some moms have medical needs where they know that they'll be in the hospital, or perhaps baby's going to have medical needs and they know in advance that that'll be the case. sometimes location is an issue. You don't want to have an unassisted birth and there's not a midwife or a home birth midwife in your area, so a hospital is where you're going to go. Sometimes money is an issue and you go where the insurance will pay for you to go. I've heard all of those as reasons, and I think that all of those are valid, and whatever your reason is, it's valid for you. The only one that I think is maybe not quite so valid is family pressure. But some moms have a really hard time overcoming that. I would encourage any mom who feels like that's the reason for a hospital birth to really do some soul searching, and perhaps some work on, should I advocate for my baby in this way? It's different if it's a husband-wife relationship. That's harder. But if it's just like outside family or friends, if you want to have a home birth and the only thing that's stopping you is that, I would really do some soul searching and decide, maybe I don't need to let those people have such a say in my life, or at least not in this, if you feel strongly about it. But otherwise, there are many reasons that moms choose a hospital birth. A lot of times just because mom feels more comfortable there, or she wants to have her first baby there, just because birth is new and all of this, that, and the other. So whatever your reason, you want to still have a great birth at the hospital. And that's something that my students have really shown me is possible. And I love getting birth stories after any baby is born, from my students, or even I'll have podcast listeners send me their stories, and they're just, it's just beautiful to read them. And it often makes me cry. I get all teary-eyed reading birth stories. But I really like the hospital birth stories, especially the ones where the mamas send pictures and talk about how they went through my classes, or even if they just read or listened to the podcast or whatever, but then how they used that information and how they worked with that during their baby's birth. And that's just, that's really cool, because it shows you that even if you're birthing in what might not be the most conducive to a super smooth birth, which is, I'm sorry ladies, that's the definition of a hospital birth. It's not conducive to the smoothest birth ever, just because so much stuff gets in the way. But moms are still able, when you understand the birth process and when you make the right choices along the way, still able to have a great birth. And even many of them have a really super smooth birth. It's just, I can think of names right now in my mind of moms who's just, watching them birth at the hospital probably gave their doctors and nurses a treat, because they saw something they didn't get to see very often, which is a woman in her power giving birth, which is that's just awesome. But so I said a minute ago, when you've done the preparation and when you've taken some steps, it goes a long way. See, one of the big problems that I hear when women talk about natural birth is I'm going to try to have a natural birth. And I've touched on this on the scope a little bit. Actually, we had a daddy on the scope. It was probably a few scopes ago, and he said, my wife was going to try and have a natural birth, but then it just got to be too much. And that's what I hear a lot, is I'm going to try to have a natural birth. And I don't know, I guess we could go with old Yoda. There is no try, only do. And it's not, it's not really that cut and dry. It's not really that black and white, because things happen. But when our only preparation is, I'm going to try and have a natural birth, the chance of having a natural birth, really in any situation, though it's better in the hospital because you're not immediately going to have all those interventions, but still, if the only thing you do to prepare is say, well, I'm going to try, that might not work out for you so well, because birth, it's more than just try. There's more to it. So, reading a book, like, reading what to expect when you're expecting, and then checking into the hospital and saying, I'm just going to try and make it through and grin and bear it, is probably not going to work very well. So you have to prepare for birth. A lot of us, we've kind of come to realize now, thanks to wonderful advocacy groups like La Leche League and stuff, that breastfeeding may not come natural, even though it's natural. And I really feel like we need to get to the same place with birth. We need to realize that even though birthing is natural, it is what our womanly body was designed to do. It's just not gonna, thank you. Grover wasn't designed to give birth, but he's awfully cute, isn't he? Anyways, so, I'm sorry, I'm distracted by Grover now. Basically, birth is natural, but we need to learn how to work with it. And that's one of the big things. But that's only part of what you want to do. So and I know we don't have a long time in the scope, but one of the first things that you need to do is think about who your doctor is going to be or your midwife. Think about where you're going to give birth. And actually, usually that's what we think first is, oh, who's my doctor going to be or who's my midwife going to be? But if you're planning a hospital birth, I don't think that should be your first choice. The first research that you do. The first thing that you want to do is take a look at the hospital. You know, what hospitals are available to me to give birth? And the same things that we talked about at the beginning of the scope might influence that. So your location and your insurance, especially, are two really big things. Or whatever. I know that some of you are, you're across the world, so you don't have exactly the same insurance structure that we have here in the United States, which is kind of crummy. But anyways, whatever's going on, if you have government provided health care or whatever, there may still be some choice there or some limits on choice. So I know that like moms in Australia can choose to go to a particular hospital and have it paid for, or there's also private options. And I know that you moms in the UK, you can choose to go to a particular hospital, use the government's midwives, the NHS midwives, but there are also still independent midwives and that sort of thing. So your choice is probably going to be influenced by your location and also by how you can or want to pay for it. But look within those choices. If you have options, look and pick the hospital that has the best record. So, and this can be hard to find out, though there are some online watchdogs that can give reports on hospitals or try to give reports on hospitals. Some hospitals refuse to report their statistics, which could be telling in and of itself. You can't have a lay midwife a lay midwife can't attend a birth in the United States or in the UK or anything. It's got to be a certified nurse midwife or in the UK, a midwife who's gone through the NHS midwifery training programs. So at a hospital, you're limited on who you can pick. She has to have privileges. So when you are checking out hospitals, you can ask like specific things. A big thing is, what is their cesarean rate? Like I said, some hospitals will tell you, some won't, which is maybe a red flag. But you want to ask, what's the cesarean rate? I know that a lot of hospitals in Brazil, it's close to 80-90%. In the United States, the nationwide rate for cesarean is 30%. So that's really high. But if you can find a hospital that's that or lower, then you know that they're on average. If it's 50%, 60%, anything like that, I mean, that's probably a hospital to stay away from. Midwife Carla Hartley says, don't go to a cesarean store if you don't want a cesarean birth, which might be a blunt or harsh way to put it, but it kind of gets the point across. If you don't want a surgical birth, don't go to a cesarean store. So ask the hospital for what their rates are, because the World Health Organization says a 12 to 15% rate is a good rate. And many care providers who work hard to help their moms have natural birth and avoid cesareans have an even lower rate, like 2 to 5% even. But 12 to 15% would be considered a good rate based on what the World Health Organization says. 30% is too high. There's something broken in maternity care in America and in the developed world for it to be that high. But certainly you don't want to go to one that has it even higher. So that's a good thing to ask at first. Another thing that we used to have women ask was, what's your episiotomy rate? Episiotomy is something that even the medical community is starting to acknowledge is relatively useless, but it might be something that is important to ask. I mean, I think that a primary first-time mom would be primary cesarean rate, and I think that that's important to ask. But part of the reason why the cesarean rate is inflated is because they're not giving second-time moms the chance to VBAC or have a vaginal birth after cesarean. So having an idea of what their primary cesarean rate is would be a good idea. But if their rate is high, you know that it's going to be high for primary moms. And yes, you're right. So most OBs now know that tearing is better. It doesn't sound better, but really it is. So that used to be something that we asked, but isn't so important now. And yes, if the hospital has an alternative birthing center attached to it, often they have more of a natural paradigm. They'll have certified nurse midwives on staff and that sort of thing, so that's good. But asking about the cesarean rate, you might ask about the instrumental delivery rate too. That means using forceps or a vacuum extractor. A lot of obstetricians won't do that now. They just go right for a cesarean because they feel like if it's bad enough that they need to use that a cesarean is safer for mom and baby. And in a lot of cases that's probably true because especially forceps can be pretty brutal, but vacuum extraction can be pretty tough too on baby. So but if they have a higher instrumental delivery rate, it's another indication that something is probably not right with policies and procedures. Other things that I would ask are, will they let you go home if you get there and you too early, or do they go straight for a Pitocin augmentation? That's another thing to wonder, because if you get there and things seem really early and puttery and it's like it's not getting started, it's much better to go home than to sit around and get on a Pitocin drip. Also, what's their policy on an IV and oral fluids? Yes, asking for a baby-friendly hospital is important, especially for baby after birth and in the immediate time after birth. So you want to be able to be free, to be upright, to be moving around. So what's the hospital's policy on these things? Does a mom have to have an IV? Can she go without an IV? If her care provider says, if doctor or nurse midwife says it's okay to go without an IV, then is the hospital going to allow that, or are they going to say it's against our policy? That's something that you want to know. Another thing that is good to ask is would they let you do a HEP block instead of an IV? Intermittent monitoring is a good thing. Are they open to intermittent monitoring? Do they have the staff for that? Because the evidence, and I actually have an article on naturalbirthandbabycare.com. Hi, Billy. So you can go to naturalbirthandbabycare.com, and it's /blog. It's actually a few pages back now because there's so many scopes up there. But there's an article called "Is Fetal Monitoring Really Saving Babies?" Or you can just head over to naturalbirthandbabycare.com. There's a little search icon on the top of the screen. Just type that in, "Is fetal monitoring really saving babies?" And I really dig into the research on this. So that is a good thing to ask. Will they let you do intermittent fetal monitoring? So that means that you don't have to be stuck in the bed with the monitor belts on you. There's two. One that monitors baby, one that monitors contractions. Intermittent means that there isn't any monitor of contractions. Thank you for the share, Billy. And it means that they listen to baby intermittently, every 15 minutes, every 20 minutes or so. It depends again on the policy. So those are good questions to ask because they help you know how active you'll be in your birthing time. And also they let you know, is this hospital really open to natural birth or not? If they've got high cesarean rates, if they're really stuck on their policies and procedures, then that can be a tough thing. And if this is your second or subsequent baby and you had a cesarean with your first baby or a subsequent baby, then of course you're going to want to ask the hospital, are they friendly to VBAC? But you start with the hospital. Because oftentimes, even if you pick a good care provider, if it's a hospital that has hard policies, they can get in the way. They can essentially tie your care provider's hands, which is something you don't want. Now, if you're going to birth with a certified nurse midwife, she will often stay with you the entire birthing time. Because that's the midwifery model of care, is really to provide continuous support. Or sometimes they work in shifts. This is pretty common in the UK. But you'll always have a midwife with you. And they're able to run interference a little bit more. But I would still definitely have I would pick the hospital that's going to be the most friendly, or you feel is going to be the most friendly to you and baby, and you being up and active during your birthing time, because that's really what's best for baby too. Okay, so, and then with an OB, they don't, usually the OB checks in periodically, as in calls and checks in, but they let the nurse monitor you, and they might not get there until just shortly before baby's born, so they're not running as much interference. So especially if you're picking an obstetrician, I would really make sure that the hospital is going to be helpful with having a natural birth. So that brings us to the next thing. Now it's time to choose your care provider. And there are a lot of differences in care providers, and I'm not anti-OB or only pro-midwife or anything, but again, that midwifery model of care is much more women-focused or woman-centered, and also they see the mama baby as a unit, whereas in obstetrics there's kind of this dichotomy between mom and baby. So like sometimes, even if you read an obstetric textbook, right, there's sometimes the mom and the baby are treated as two separate entities. And of course, really, mom and baby are two separate entities when we get into it. But they kind of see what's different, or what's good for mom and what's good for baby might be two different things. Whereas the midwifery model of care kind of is more, if it's good for mom, it's usually good for baby, and if it's good for baby, it's usually good for mom. So they kind of look at the mama-baby unit, and that's actually one of the reasons why I call my classes Mama-Baby Birthing, is because it's that mama-baby unit. And so there's not like this, yes, and we talked about that, Billy, you missed it because you came in part of the way through, but we did talk about that. But you want somebody that acknowledges that kind of mama-baby unit, and acknowledges that the two of you are working together, and you're in this together, and that doesn't set up this paradigm of let me save the baby from the mom, which is, I think that's kind of what we see a lot. So look for a care provider who is going to see the two of you as working together in birth as much as possible. I know some of what I'm talking about. It's going to be hard to find a care provider who would talk like that, because it's weird, I guess, to them. But yeah, you want your care provider to be supportive of natural birth, and to be supportive of you working with your baby, and not feel like, okay, we have to do X, Y, Z because this is what the textbook says, or this is what the hospital policies say. But rather, they're going to listen to you, and like Billy said a minute ago, they're going to say, okay, we're going to do what works for mom. Now, all of us, me, all of you listening to this scope, you're sitting there thinking, okay, well, if there was really and truly something wrong with mom or baby, then we would really and truly go for the intervention. I say that because it needs to be said, but it should be unspoken. If I were having a baby and I knew that I needed to have some intervention because it would be life-saving for my baby, well, then certainly I would do that. But unfortunately, they play the, oh, baby's in trouble card, when that is not really the case. So find a care provider who is really committed. And some of the same things that we talked about with the hospital, if you can find out what their cesarean rate is, their episiotomy rate, what's their policy on IVs, what's their policy on monitoring, are they okay with mom having having liquid by mouth, or even food if she needs it? What are they going to do, like with mom being up and active during her birthing time? Is it going to be like, you got to get back in bed, woman? Or is it going to be like, okay, let's help you get up. You can sit on the birth bar or birth ball. We can put up a squat bar. Are they open to you being up and moving around? That's a good indication of things. And then also going back to the baby-friendly hospital thing, where do you find this stuff at? Well, Billy, you can go to my website, which is naturalbirthandbabycare.com, or for something easier to remember, just go to Natural Birth TV, and I've been writing about it for the last 10 years. But if you're asking where I find all this stuff at, it's because I've been studying this stuff for probably like the last 20 years. I got obsessed with babies when I was hardly more than a baby myself, and really into birth and babies in high school, and that love affair has never stopped. So, all this behind me all of this and more is where I get all of this stuff. And of course, I do my own continuing education. So yeah. But if you want more about it to read like as parents, then definitely go to naturalbirth.tv. That's the scope listing on my site. But yeah, where do you go to find it out about the hospital? Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Sorry if that's what you meant, Billy. There are some watchdog sites that report on the statistics for a hospital, and I can't remember any of the URLs off the top of my head, and I didn't write it down, so I apologize for that. But you can just go on Google or Bing and type in, hospital cesarean rates, and some of them might come up. And then I know there's some people who, oh gosh, maybe it's Childbirth Connection. Anyways, they have like grades based on state, at least in the United States. So if you're not in the U.S., that might not be relevant. But based on state, that can tell you what statewide what the rates are. And then if you are in the U.S. or in your country, there's often like government organizations that keep rates overall. But yeah, a hospital is not gonna publish that kind of stuff on their website usually. Sometimes you can get it by calling. Again, some will tell you what their rates are and their statistics are, and depending on where you are in the world, the information is easier to get. Like in the UK, it's easier to get because they're required to keep much more scrupulous records and also publish records more than, say, hospitals in the United States are. So yeah, they should have like public reviews and stuff of the hospitals. So yeah, but it can be, and for an obstetrics practice, you can sometimes call or ask them, and they have a sheet. Like I know for my midwife, she's a home birth midwife, but she has a sheet where she's got all of these statistics and things for her practice, and you can ask her for it, and she actually gives it to you if you're a first-time client in the information packet that she gives you that tells you all of these statistics. Cesarean rate, if they've ever lost a mom or baby, those are all good things to know when you're considering any care provider or any hospital. And generally, people say, oh, you should ask that stuff of home birth midwives, but nobody ever says that you should ask that of a hospital. But really, you should. So, no, I haven't had any of my kiddos in the hospital, Billy. They were all born at home. So, I wouldn't really want to go near a hospital when I was having a baby personally. But most of my childbirth class students do. So, I respect them, and that's what we've been talking about. And actually, we're hitting the timer on our scope. So we've talked a lot about what to ask the hospital, and we've talked a bit about what to ask and what to do when you're looking for a care provider, and those things are really important. And then also, other things to do is your health and pregnancy is really, really very important. You want to be super healthy during pregnancy because that means that you're healthier during birth. That means baby, placenta, uterus, and all of that stuff going on down there are well nourished and healthy for your birthing time. You also want to prepare for birth. We touched on this a little bit when we touched about birth is natural, but you need to really be prepared for it. So you want to prepare, like as in prepared childbirth, birthing classes or books or whatever it is that works for you to do. It's naturalbirthandbabycare.com, or you can go to naturalbirth.tv, and that'll take you to the website too. But to get to the homepage, it's naturalbirthandbabycare.com. I know it's a mouthful, but 10 years ago I wasn't as savvy about internet stuff as I am now, and that's when I started it. So anyways, naturalbirth.tv will get you there real quick. Okay, so, and then, let me think. Yep, you can go to @birthbabycare on YouTube. Same as my handle here on Periscope. I'm trying to make sure that I cover my last few points before I cut this off and go eat my lunch because I'm pretty hungry. Okay, so yeah, good hospital, good doctor, prepare physically, prepare for birth, and then make sure you don't go to the hospital too early. That's another really big thing. That's a really, really important thing. And I'm not going to have time to go into all of the guidelines right now. I do have a class called, it's kind of a mini class, called Navigating, Smart Mama's Guide to Navigating a Hospital Birth. And you can get that class at birthbabycare.com/hospital birth. That's birthbabycare.com/hospital birth. I cover everything that we just talked about, and I go into a lot more detail on physical health, preparing for birth, and especially deciding when you should go to the hospital. So you can get that at birthbabycare.com/hospitalbirth. Yes, it's good to keep an open mind because a healthy baby and a healthy mama are a good thing, but also I think that the quality of the journey is important too. So the biggest thing is feeling like you were respected and listened to, and that you were part of the decision-making process, because there's a big difference between a woman who feels manipulated into something and a woman who feels like she was listened to and part of the decision-making. And a woman who is having a baby is a woman, not a baby herself, and deserves to be treated with respect. So you want a care provider and a hospital that are going to do that, no matter what the ultimate birth outcome might be. And so when people say healthy birth, healthy baby, I do think that that's a good thing to do, or a good thing to keep in mind. But also we need to put some qualifiers on there that a healthy baby at all costs is maybe not the best paradigm, and that's kind of what it is right now. So we need to kind of rethink that paradigm to take into account that mom obviously has her baby's best interests at heart, and we should respect that. Well, I'm glad that you feel like you've learned a lot, Billy. So with that, I am going to cut this off today. Otherwise, we're going to keep going forever and ever and ever, and my belly's just going to keep rumbling. But so yeah, check out the class at birthbabycare.com/hospitalbirth, or check out naturalbirthandbabycare.com for a lot more. And today's Friday, yay! So I will talk to you again at 1 p.m. on Monday here on Periscope. Everybody have a good day, and thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for being here, everyone.